FNR, Football Nation Radio.
COTSANIS, no call! Score!
Salamini for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli, what vision! Blasts.
Yes!
That's it!
Miljevic.
Beautiful ball! Here's Bozanic. They might have won it!
The Pioneers with George Donikian and George COTSANIS on FNR, Football Nation Radio.
It's that time of the week. George COTSANIS and George Donikian together again, and George has come up with an absolute doozy for Easter. He's found us a pioneer with not one story to tell, but about 55.
I've got the storyteller of all time here
I
with us.
think you have, probably because he's probably about 5 minutes older than you.
A little bit older than me, but I do remember him playing on the wing, so that gets him qualified for the show. That's
Well, I
first
reckon I
box
remember
ticked.
his whole career.
Really?
Absolutely.
Tell us about his...
Because he could play.
They could play.
Could play. And he has some stories that match his efforts on the field too.
Welcome, Scott Patterson.
There you go.
Okay,
glad you
guys.
did
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
By the way, we have an hour, but it'll fly.
Cool.
All right. So stand by, strap in. That seat, by the way, has been the venue for about 5, maybe 8 teammates. Is that about right?
Yeah, there's been a couple of teammates of
And
his,
the
yeah.
number one pioneer at the start of the program was a guy you may or may not know.
Yeah, big influence for you. Charlie Yankos was our first guest. You remember
Yes,
Charlie?
Of course. Played with Charlie
Tell us about Charlie.
3 years at Heidelberg. Oh, what a great player, and underrated actually. As a defender, just so strong, very, very hard to get around. People underestimated that. At training, he was just magnificent.
And tough up here.
Oh, mentally tough. I think I made that comment to Kotsi. He was as mentally tough as anyone I played with or against in that whole time. Really good player and a good guy too, and had a great career for the Socceroos as well, didn't he?
He had a sensational career. But let's talk about Scott Patterson.
Mm.
And let's talk about the man that was a big, I suppose, influence. He was always, hard but fair? Talking about your father.
Yeah, Wally from Wally from Northern Ireland. He was certainly hard. Apparently, back in his day, in the late 50s, early 60s, played for Juventus also, by the way.
Is
Wally.
that right?
And he was a right fullback or a centre half, and he was tough. He was feared
Took no
out there.
prisoners?
Apparently. No, took no prisoners. And a lot of the guys that played against him, when I met them, when I was playing, said your father was an absolute brutal person out in the soccer pitch.
Did they ever try and take anything, as they say, payback?
They tried to get him back. They didn't think that was a good idea though, because he went harder apparently.
And rightly so. So where did you start your junior career?
Oh, well, at Box Hill. I grew up in Box Hill, and Box Hill was a bit of a junior soccer players' factory back then. We had some great players that came through that system, including Mickey Valentine, one of my teammates that went to Heidelberg. A guy called Greg McLeod, who might be listening right now. Pommy. He's down there in Ocean Grove. Quick cheerio to Pommy and his couple of mates down there, Gibby and Stewie.
Let's hope they're still
They're probably just
awake.
warming to the evening.
Well, they've been playing golf this morning and they've been
yes.
drinking since 1 o'clock. So
Yes. They probably can't. They cannot make a sense of any of the words we're speaking.
We'll say hello to them from the podcast when they listen back tomorrow.
Yeah, but look, Greg McLeod, I mean, he won the Weinstein medal as a 16-year-old for the best soccer player in Victoria. He then he got presented with that medal by the great German Franz Beckenbauer.
Get out.
Before a New York Cosmos game at Olympic Park, and that was when he was 16. But by the time he was 18,
All over.
there's 2 things happened in his life. One was
Women?
girls,
Oh, yes.
and the second one was alcohol.
Yeah, well,
And fair to say, his soccer career went south after that. So
what a great show.
had played a few games in the state league, but he was a good player.
But he had a big 2 years, you reckon?
Yeah, big 2 years.
Between 16 and 18, a great career.
That was a whole lot of his career.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so Box Hill. What got you to Box Hill? Was it following another mate, or did you put your hand up and go, no, I want to go play Box
Oh
Hill?
no! Well, my father had also played at Box Hill. It was a real British club back then, and really strong junior club, as I mentioned. And we had a great run through junior, some really outstanding junior sides. There's a guy called Ian Roothouse that played for Preston Macedonia, if you remember, right fullback. Ian was a great player, and he played that under-16 side, even though he was only 14.
Yep.
And he went on to great things as well. And so, yeah, it was a really well-coached junior club, and produced a lot of great players. And that's what kept that club in the Victorian Premier League or the State League back in those days for so many years. Really sort of punched above their weight in a lot of ways.
Well, Billy Murray, who was a guest here a few weeks ago, mentioned when he came, he benefited from the fruits of those junior teams.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And also, mentioned that there was a lot of father-son type scenario with great players like yourself, and then the sons came through. So there was a few others that I think he mentioned that might have...
well, actually, Greg McLeod,
yeah.
he was one, and there was others. There's quite a few others there. I just can't think of all of them right now.
Yeah.
But there was a really strong history in that club. And
Who was the coach?
Well, the main coach when I was there, got the first team, was Billy Murray, who went on to coach Preston Macedonia, and Billy certainly did benefit from that, having a lot of us guys that in that '82 season when we got promoted. We had a phenomenal side there. We actually I remember we beat Richmond at Richmond 9-0, and they were fourth on the ladder at the time. We were second, and that was a first division record in those days. We just absolutely tore them apart.
How many did you pop in?
I think I got 3, maybe 4, George. I can't remember actually, but there was a few.
You can remember. You can remember every guy you scored.
How long were you in Box Hill?
Oh, well, from the age of probably 8 until I left when I was sort of 20.
Wow.
And ended up at Heidelberg in 1983, and away I went.
Before you went to Heidelberg, you had a couple of very interesting stints at some places which don't come up on your profile. Right, so you went to Sunshine City.
Well, they've been censored.
No, I don't know if they've been censored, but you can't get them on Google, but you can get them at the Pioneers here. So we know you went to Sunshine City. What got you to Sunshine City?
Well, there's a mate of mine from Box Hill had gone there, David Singleton,
Yeah.
and his father drove us over there. I was only 17 and got to
No licence.
got to Sunshine City. It wasn't a big career there.
How many games did you play?
3.5 games I played.
Yeah.
And
What happened?
we had a bit of a run-in with the senior coach, Ian Petherick. He said he was going to select me for the 4th game and then changed his mind, and I played in the first half in the reserves, and then there was a bit of a kerfuffle at half-time in the reserve game, and they weren't sure whether I was meant to come off and sit on the bench for the first team or whether I was meant to get a shower and go home. So
what did you do?
I told them all to shove it, to be honest. Yeah.
Did you have the shower?
I had the shower, I got changed. I watched the senior game, and then I went home, and Ian rang me on the Sunday night to try and talk me into coming back, and I said, no, you can go forth and multiply. Exactly right, George.
So you took the reserve coach out on the Saturday, you took the senior coach out on the Sunday, so you gave everyone a serve, and then you left.
This is all at the grand age, mature age of 17.
17, fair to say I was pretty wild back then.
Right.
Okay, and then there's another one that doesn't appear on your profile.
What happened then?
Unless I Google Scott Dixon.
Well, Scott Dixon did play some games for Riversdale.
Did he?
And he looked a lot like me,
Did he?
apparently. So
Long red hair.
Sorry, we didn't do it fine cotton, did we?
well, not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite.
So you didn't back Scott Dixon. Is that what it
Didn't
is?
back him. That's probably the only difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, there was a lot of ex-Box Hill reserve team players that had gone to Riversdale
Right.
in the Industrial League 3rd Division. And because you couldn't transfer twice in one season back then, I was out, as of round 4, I was out for the season. So they convinced me to come down to Riversdale and play under a false name. So
Convinced you.
Convinced me. It didn't take a lot of convincing.
I was going to say.
As I had over a couple of beers. So there I was playing for Riversdale in the Industrial League 3rd Division.
How many games you played?
12 games.
Right. You score a few goals?
Got a few, yes. I can't remember exactly how many, but it wasn't a great standard.
So when did it all come apart?
Well,
12 games.
half time of the last game, someone spotted me and said, "You're Scott Patterson from Box Hill." And I said, "No, I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about." So I quickly ran out of the back of the dressing room and got my mate to drive me home. And then I got a phone call a few weeks later from the Victorian Soccer Federation inviting me to a tribunal hearing. So I didn't think that was very
As
nice.
Scott
Didn't think that was
Dixon.
very nice of them. I said, "You got the wrong person. This is Scott Patterson."
At what point did you think the game was up?
When they suspended me for 12 weeks,
Okay.
I thought I'm in trouble here.
Yeah.
So
that Riversdale won the league,
they won the league,
but
got docked 2 points for every game I played in, which was 12. So their 24 points lost meant they finished bottom of the ladder instead of top where we'd actually finished, and they got relegated.
So quite possibly one of the few times in the history of the game, anywhere in the world, a team wins the competition and gets demoted.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do
That's
you
not a
reckon
bad-
Riversdale have had another year like that ever?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but they
Did
did.
you go to the presentation night at least?
No, I
Let
didn't.
us know.
I felt quite guilty because they did give me a couple of big trophies for top goal scorer and best and fairest, which I gave back, to be fair.
Okay.
I gave them back.
And
And
I
said,
hope,
look,
I hope they're in some trophy cabinet like a Hall of Fame in their clubhouse.
Scott Dixon.
Scott
They're all
Dixon.
made out to Scott Dixon.
Might
Yeah,
be
that's
not- might be
interesting.
not Hall of Shame.
What name would have been on the trophies? Just out of curiosity.
oh, I think they knew my real name was Patterson.
Well, just checking.
I didn't have them all bluffed.
We've uncovered some old stories here,
Oh,
like with
mate.
Shocker and his
If
missing
this
goalposts.
is a preview of what's to come over the next 45 minutes, I'm not moving from here.
Sit in your seat, hang on tight.
Okay,
We're going to go on a bit of a ride.
Okay.
Okay.
What happened next?
Well, what happened
You
next? I
served your suspension.
Served my suspension, and then I went back to Box Hill, cap in hand, and asked if I could have a game. And so I got some games in the first team at the end of '81. That was, and then '82 was a big breakthrough season for me. We won, or came second in the first division, got promoted, and during that year I got selected to play for a full Victorian team against Watford.
The visiting Watford
The
side.
visiting Watford, owned by Elton John back
Yes,
then.
yes.
And Graham Taylor was the manager, who went on to
Of
manage
course,
England.
yeah.
So some of the names they had were John Barnes of Liverpool fame, Nigel Callaghan, Luther Blissett, who both played for England, and there were several others. Obviously, they were a
Good
good side,
characters,
and
yeah.
the next year they had a very good year
Yeah.
in the old English First Division. So they were the top
They
side
finished second to Liverpool and runners up in the FA Cup.
Where did you play then?
at Olympic Park. Yeah, and I come off the bench. I was on the bench. I come off the bench with about 25 minutes to go, ahead of George Campbell, and George has never got over that.
Wee Georgie.
Wee Georgie. He never got over the fact that I went on before him.
He does
And
hold
was-
a grudge, doesn't he?
He does, and he was a superstar from South Melbourne. Well, that's what he told me anyway.
Aberdeen / South Melbourne.
Aberdeen.
Yeah, the White Pele. Didn't they call him the White
They
Pele?
did, but you were ahead of him in your
And I got ahead of him, so
Yeah.
he wasn't happy. I was very happy.
If George is listening, and he probably is, yeah, he's going to ring us up later.
Oh,
And by the
sure
way,
there's an
if you
abusive
do ring,
text coming.
Ital have given us a fantastic Colomba, and along with the Colomba, which is like a panettone, but it's
The
even
cousin.
nicer. Yeah. My wife took the Ital Colomba to the office the other day, and it was magnificently received, I might add. And also well received was the Kulurakia that come from Ital. So if you ring us, 03 99 44 9999, and you're the best caller over the next hour, Ital will present you with one of those fantastic Colombas and the Kulurakia, and we'll all put it down to Scotty Patterson making you get on the phone.
We'll even let Scotty take some home.
Why not?
Yes, we're trading for the stories. So Watford got your shop window, didn't it? Really?
It did, and just that 25 minutes helped a lot. And all of a sudden, there was a number of National League clubs calling me, and of course, ended up at Heidelberg at the start of '83.
What other clubs spoke to you at that
Oh,
stage?
Preston Macedonia.
Yep.
It was coached by Peter Ollerton, and Peter used to come down and
Good
watch
player.
Box Hill a fair bit. Yeah, very good player, and he came down to watch Box Hill a fair bit, and I nearly signed there, and at the last minute, I went to Heidelberg.
Why?
Well, the true story there is that the president, which was John Brenoff, if I remember,
At Preston, yeah.
tried to change my contract as I was about to sign. Quite. That's an absolute
Substantially?
fact. Oh, he said the signing on money's taken off the table, which Peter Ollerton had offered. So I actually said to John, well, then I'm not signing here, and he was pretty upset about that. And I walked out and grabbed Peter Ollerton and said, Peter, the contract's changed. I'm not signing. And he rang me the next day and said, they've taken that money off the table. I said, well, I've got a bigger offer from Heidelberg, and I'm going there. So that's how it happened. So I was virtually going to pen to paper almost.
Okay, so who was the coach at Heidelberg when you signed?
That was a guy called Ken Morton. Now, do you remember him?
Yeah, we remember Kenny. He's
He was
now in
Terrific
Tassie,
talent.
I think. Yeah.
Played for Australia, didn't he?
Ken Morton?
No,
he's
no,
a-
no.
I'm thinking of Ken
He was from Sunderland.
Sunderland. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ken was a good guy, but had a bit of a problem with the drinking. And, yeah, he got sacked at the,
Oh,
end,
dear.
at the end of that season.
So who stepped in?
Well, at the end of '83, they put Gary Cole and Jimmy Tansey in charge.
The duo.
In an interim, but they turned the team around. They were fantastic, and we had a really good run for those last 6 or 8 games. I think we were undefeated, and
Well, you were struggling to get a game under Kenny.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was in and out at the start.
Yeah.
In and out, but it was half the Socceroos squad was in that dressing room at
Yeah.
Heidelberg.
Yeah.
That was a very strong side, and blokes like Mickey Patterson and myself and even Mickey Valentine at times we were in and out of that team.
Yep.
What
but
was
then-
Mickey P like in those days?
Oh well, he's like he is today. He's crazy, Mickey P.
Character.
He's a great guy. He's a good mate of mine, but so up and down. I mean, he's just such a brilliant footballer.
When he was on, he was amazing. Wasn't
He did things on the pitch that other people just couldn't do. One of my favourite ones when I think about Mickey P is it was actually when we were at Juventus. We were playing West Adelaide over in High Marsh Stadium one day, and he hit this pass to me that I didn't even know he'd seen me make this run. I was running flat across the halfway line, and I turned to go towards the goals, and he'd seen me turn, and he hit this 50-metre pass with his left foot. It just went straight into my path, put me straight through with the keeper to beat. And I was lucky enough to score. And I always remember that pass as most people wouldn't have even seen the run, let alone be able to hit the pass.
Yeah.
And he was very good.
Very
good.
skillful.
Yep.
Just going back to Heidelberg, so it was
Yep.
a strong team. Name some of the players that
Oh,
like were the stars of that
Oh,
side.
well, you had young Jeff Olver there. I mean, what a career he had. 7 years as the
Sat in
number
that
one.
chair with you in the studio?
Yeah. He's a very good friend of mine, Jo, and so he was a real up and coming goalkeeper. He was number 2 in Socceroos in those days. I think
Yeah.
Terry Greedy was number
Yeah,
1.
Terry Greedy, yeah.
But Jeff became number 1 for 7 years. So Jeff, and at the back, of course, Charlie, Donnie McLeod.
Not much got through those two.
Tough as anything, Donnie.
Yeah.
You kick a brick wall and enjoy it. You know.
Do it with a smile.
He was pretty good in the social area as well, I can tell you, in the nightclubs. So, but in the midfield, like Theo Salamides, Mickey Valentine, I mentioned, but people like Jimmy Campbell, towards the end of his career, but, what a player he was. And up front, we had Stuart Stevenson there for a while. The Screaming Skull was his nickname. He's an absolute nutcase, but what a player he was.
He could score a goal.
He was
yeah.
quick and fit, and despite the fact he didn't train that well, he was just always there on match days, So
Yes, he
Were you a
came
good
in-
trainer?
I always had to train pretty hard because of the sort of size of build I had. I wasn't always as fit as I should have been, to be honest, looking back. But I always trained hard, absolutely. Probably just socialised a bit hard, George. That was one of the issues.
So, what did you see as your difference maker? What was the thing that gave you the edge?
As a player, I mean,
Yeah.
I used to
Make the transition from sitting on the bench and being a regular.
Yeah, look, it was actually that period of end of '83 when Coley and Tans took over. They actually gave me the confidence. They said, "You're playing, and this is what you're going to do, and you just follow these instructions. And when you get the ball, you just take them on." So they gave me this sort of freedom to just have a crack. And I worked, but the deal was I had to work really hard out in the ground, and then when you get it one-on-one, you just go for it. So they gave me a lot of confidence. That's what made me believe that I could play at that level. And then the next year I had a very good year in '84, and it was a pity that they didn't stay on because they both left because Brian Garvey arrived, and a lot of players left because Brian Garvey arrived.
Were you one of those?
I was at the end of
Idiot.
at the end of '85. I did. That's
Okay.
why I left. Absolutely.
Okay, tell us why.
Well, look, we had a very good team in '84. We got beaten in the grand final that year by South Melbourne, and they were the only team we couldn't sort of dominate. They were a very
Strong
good,
South Melbourne.
very good side.
Yeah.
Very good side. And
Tell us about the players from that
South
south
Melbourne.
side. Yeah.
Oh, look, the whole team was good, but Stevie Blair at the back, John Eisendorn. John Eisendorn's a mate of mine as we got together at Juventus. John Eisendorn, clearly the best sweeper of that era. I mean, he was a fantastic player. Really good reader of the play.
I was going to say the vision.
And he was tough too. He wasn't that big, but geez, he was tough. He'd fly in, great. He was
Low centre of gravity.
I rate John Eisendorn as one of the best players I ever played with or against. He was top shelf.
And he could play in multiple positions, which gave him some versatility. He could play in midfield, and you wouldn't know any difference. would you?
Great pass with the ball.
Yeah.
Really good pass with the ball. Hardly ever missed a target. Very smart player as well. So those two at the back. I mean, Blairy was a great centre half.
Superstar.
Great bloke too. And the midfield they had Oscar Crino. I mean, Oscar.
Kenny Murphy, Carl Holford.
Yeah, and up front Charlie and Dougie.
Yeah, deadly duo.
Great. That was a great team. But Oscar was never rated as high as I thought he should be. He played for Australia and all that, but he was a great player. He was tough. People didn't realise how tough he was. He was a big, strong lad.
Because he had all that skill.
Very skillful and great passer of the ball. I mean, he was I suppose a tougher version of Mickey P in a lot of ways. He was just a very good player. Oscar rated him very highly.
Yeah.
And what were the matches like against South Melbourne?
Oh, well,
Were they?
Do you remember
the
a match in-
the true derbies?
oh, it was incredible atmosphere. I mean, the one I remember the most was 1984 at our ground. There must have been 15, 16. They reckon there was 18,000 there that day, but I reckon they were making it up.
We're going to go Laurie Schwab and say 20, so come on.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people there, and the game sort of erupted in the first 5 minutes when Oscar tried to break Charlie's leg, and Charlie got up and belted him, and Charlie got sent off, and at half-time, 2 more players got sent off in the dressing room for a half-time melee that happened. It was a big punch-up.
Who were those two?
That was Joe Angeli
Yeah,
for
he was a
us,
strong boy.
and I'm just trying to think who it was for South Melbourne. It might have actually been Kenny Murphy.
No, okay.
It might have been Kenny.
We'll get him on soon.
In fact,
Kenny.
I'm sure
He'll
it
be able
was
to tell
Kenny
us.
because I saw him on an aeroplane recently, and we were talking about that day. I'm sure he told me it was him. But
Is that the day Charlie and Davo went toe-to-toe as well?
yeah,
Before Charlie got sent
oh
off?
look, the whole game
Yeah,
was
yeah,
violent.
yeah.
It was violent, and then at half time, there was this big player melee and punches thrown, and the crowd started running on the ground. So I remember clearly 2 policemen on horses, seriously, coming bolting past me and yelling out, "Get off the ground! Get off the ground!" The crowd's over the fence, and I looked up, and there was this kind of hysterical sort of scene where blokes were sort of punching on, and this big melee happening, and then all of a sudden they all stopped and just ran off the ground because there was 2,000 Greeks had run on the ground, and it was mayhem. It was half time was 45 minutes, if I remember.
So why was the game so hot? What set it off?
Oh,
was
look-
it was it the derby, the crowd, and all of that sort of stuff?
It was all of that, but the tackle early on from Oscar on Charlie
Had incensed them.
It incensed everyone. I ran around trying to get Oscar for the rest of the game, and he was a mate of mine. But it was a violent game, and it was just that. And they were first, and we were second on the ladder. You know, it was about round 8 or 10 or
So
something.
you were playing for all the chocolates.
Yeah, it was a big game, and it all spilt over, and it was mayhem, to be honest. And when you think back, you think, gee, how did some of the players not get, hit by supporters? It was crazy scene, to be honest. But yeah, that was an unbelievable rivalry. The 3 years I was at Heidelberg, the games against South Melbourne were just massive. Massive build-up, massive for the supporters. And they were a great side, South Melbourne, in those days, 83, 84, 85. That was, I reckon, one of their best sides ever, I would have thought. So,
Well, we're going to have so much more of what Scott Patterson did and got up to between now and 8 o'clock. Stay with us. This is the Pioneers. It's George Katsanis over there. Say hello.
Hello.
And you've got a couple of little questions that
Yeah,
you've
we
been
might-
planning, laying a trap to try and get Scott to say some more.
There might be one more or two to go. Yeah.
All right. We'll take a break, and when we come back, more of Scott Patterson on the Pioneers.
Welcome back. You're on the Pioneers. You're with 2 Georges, Donikian and Kotsanis, and our special guest, SP, Scotty Patterson.
He rather talkative one.
Well, we've got the shyness out of him, and we're going to wind him up.
He's
We're
a
going to
bit
go.
nervy early on. Geez, he's come up good, hasn't he?
Yeah. We're talking about the derbies, Heidelberg.
yep.
My memories of you flashing down that wing, and you were quick. No shin pads, socks down. The
Yeah.
memory's good, right?
Yeah, it was good.
But what I do remember about you, just not totally strange, but for a winger, you were tough as nails. You loved a stoush, and
Sorry,
you loved
so
to
did
tackle.
Wally. Come on, he was
Well,
never going to be soft.
You know
You
what?
loved to tackle.
My mates at Box Hill would tell you I didn't tackle anyone. That's a fact.
That's
And,
not how I remember it.
But, well, until I got to Heidelberg. My first game at Heidelberg ever was against Sydney City, and I was playing number 9 striker against Steve O'Connor.
Jesus.
Remember him?
Yeah. big
6
So
foot
is that when you
4.
Rocky.
started thinking false nine's good idea?
Well, that would have been a good play, George. But I tell you now, that guy belted me for 90 minutes, and boot, kicked lumps out of me. And I remember after the game sitting there feeling sorry for myself, and Jim Tansey actually heard me whinging, and he said, "Hey, listen, son," he said, "you better just get him back because it's going to happen every week, mate." And I went, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, if you can't handle that, go back to Box Hill." And I went, "Right." But I didn't realise I'd just played against the toughest player in the National Soccer League. He was tough. He was Australian centre half at that
He was a
time.
brute, wasn't
He was,
he?
he was a big, strong man,
yeah.
and I was a 20-year-old kid from Box Hill, didn't know how to handle that. So anyway, but I learnt and started throwing my weight around, and probably took it a bit too far at times.
Sink or swim. Is that it? Sink or swim?
Probably a few too many red cards in the journey, but I wasn't scared to have a
It
crack.
was a physical game in those days,
It
a
was.
bit more physical. Which leads me to just quickly diverse. Young Patrick Cooper wants to know, what do you think of the state of the game?
Paddy Cooper, g'day, Paddy. How
Have
you
we
going,
got
mate?
time?
Paddy Cooper. Well, look, the state of the game. Look, I think if you look where the Socceroos are at, it probably reflects, what I think about the state of the game. I think we're in a lull at the minute.
Yeah.
The A-League's been fantastic, obviously. The Socceroos getting into Asia, qualifying for World Cups. I just think that for some reason the quality is just not coming through, and it's a bit of a concern at the moment. The World Cup's coming up; it's going to be a concern. That game the other day, I don't know who watched it out there, but that game against Colombia in the second half, they tore us to shreds, and probably could have won 4 or 5-0. And everyone after the game was saying it's a pretty good result. Well, not when you play like that. I think they're kidding themselves a bit, to be honest. And I just think the A-League's plateaued a bit. Needs some superstars coming back in.
Well, that probably explains why the FFA is now making official overtures and asking for clubs and new bids for new licences.
Yeah, sure.
For the FFA,
Yeah.
for the A-League.
Just needs a bit of a spark.
It does. Needs new business.
Yeah, some of the games, I always watch the A-League, and some of the games it's hard to watch the whole game, to be honest, some of them. But then you look at Sydney FC, and they're a quality team to watch. They're great. Newcastle's been a great surprise packet this
Breath
year.
of fresh air, haven't they?
They've been really good attacking style, and Petratos and Naboo, fantastic.
What do you make of the young talent, people like Daniel Azani from Melbourne City?
Yeah, look,
Does he appeal to you?
Yeah, look, good. I did hear those comments from his coach saying he's still got a lot to learn, and I think he's got to learn that the game's played when you've got the ball, when you haven't got the ball. Because he's good when he's got the ball, but maybe he's got to learn about what to do when he hasn't got it. So, but he's obviously a talent, no question. But I'd like to see more, to be honest, more young blokes impressing us.
We all would.
The youth Socceroos didn't do so well recently as well.
Haven't been doing for a while.
Yeah, for a while. So that's another worrying sign. So,
But there is talent coming through. Young Schuschner made a real impression, even though we lost that first game 4-1.
yeah.
After we jumped Norway, we got rattled. But we made 3 horrendous mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't make horrendous mistakes playing for Box Hill,
Yeah.
let alone playing for Australia.
That's true. That's true. But what I worry about is, you got the back third, the middle third, and the front third is the way we always to try and keep it simple. The front third is the place you're going to have a crack, make things happen. And we've got enough players in the Socceroos that make things happen, like Tommy Rogic does, and Luongo. He had a great little run the other night.
Beautiful.
They're almost the only two that can break the lines, and there's nothing worse. You ask any defender, there is nothing worse for a defender
Coming at
than
you.
midfielders
Coming at you.
they run past their own midfield, and what do? You've got to go to the ball, you get dragged out of position, that's when you crack. But the way a lot of them play at the moment, it's just this passing through the back third, the mid third, and then the front third, there's no creativity. That's what really concerns me. And the same thing in the A-League. They need to give more young kids a go, and also players that can actually run at people and get past them, encourage them to do it rather than pass the ball backwards. That's what frustrates me.
No, that's fair enough. And I'm glad that Paddy got that question in.
Yeah, well done, Paddy.
Well done, Paddy.
If he was really brave, he'd ring and speak to us.
Yeah, but we wouldn't understand him with that Irish accent, so would we?
If it had been television, we could use subtitles.
There you go. Heidelberg came to an end. Why?
Yeah. Well,
Garvey.
Brian Garvey. That's
Yeah.
why it came to an end. I really liked Heidelberg, and I think I got on really well with the fans, and I'd sort of worked my way and been a first team player, but I just didn't rate Brian as a coach, to be honest. And I had one crazy moment towards the end of '85 where he was talking on the training track, and I was chatting away to someone because I wasn't listening to him, and
Ooh.
he said to me, he said, "Scotty, if you don't like my training, you can go and have a shower." And I said, "Thanks," and I went and had a shower. So I just ran off the training pitch, and
So was that a little bit of the
Was there many more sessions after that?
Was that a little bit of the 17-year-old popping up again?
yeah, it might have been, but I was 23 by then, George, so I should have learned a bit.
A little bit older, but not much wiser.
But yeah, probably. And so I left, and I just said to the club, look, if Brian's going to be here as coach, I'll go somewhere else. And they didn't want me to go, but I needed to go. So Brunswick Juventus it was for me.
How did that come about?
Well, Len McKendry moved from South Melbourne
Yep.
at the end of '85 to Brunswick Juventus at the start of '86. He actually signed John Eisendorn and then came after me. And as I said before, John Eisendorn was a great player. I thought, gee whiz, they're going to have some team there. They just won the National League in '85, if you remember.
Yes.
So I thought I'm going to the National League champions. Had a great squad of players. And it was a good move. We won the Southern Division in '86. Should have won the whole lot, to be honest. We're the best side in Australia at that time, and that was pretty acknowledged by most opposition players.
What went wrong
But
there?
well, here's another moment of madness I had. There's a few of them racking up there, isn't there? We were playing Adelaide City over in Adelaide in the final, and what happened? We'd finished top and won the Southern Division. We should have been playing at home. Adelaide played Footscray JUST and beat them in a second versus third match, and
Won
the
the right
National
to play
League,
at home.
the National League sent us to Adelaide. So we went over there in a bad frame of mind, with all Adelaide referees. I'll add as well, and so. About halfway through that game, Charlie Villani, who was
Great talent.
a very good player, big dude, pretty big dude.
Charlie and
He's turned
Sergio
around.
Melter.
He's turned around and punched Mehmet Jurakovic right in front of the linesman, the referee. Swung around, punched him in frustration because Mehmet was doing his usual thing, grabbing shirts and stuff. And the referee, after a big melee, decides it's a yellow card, which we couldn't believe. So our captain Brian Brown gave me an order to get Villani. So I did, and no one saw me get Villani, and that's a fact. But the referee decided after about 10 minutes of stoppage and lots of cans of beer being thrown on the ground
Someone had to go.
that someone had to go. So he just pulled out the red card and gave it to me. So I was thinking, what did I do? And it was Don Campbell, actually, referee, Adelaide referee.
Not only in Adelaide, I'm sure he coached Adelaide
Well,
City at some stage.
Well, I said, this was Adelaide. I said, what did I do? What are you sending me off for? And he couldn't say anything. He said, there's got to be a right, you have to go off. So off I went, and never even got called up to the tribunal, which
really?
meant
Well,
no one saw
there was
it.
no charge.
No
Okay.
one saw
So
anything.
no one saw anything.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I just said to Charlie I wasn't very happy with him punching my teammate. So I got him back.
Okay.
Yeah,
With a punch?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He fell over.
Okay. Right in front of you.
Didn't get up for a while either.
Fair enough. And it cost you the game, obviously.
Hard to
Well, I
prove.
went off at 0-0, and there was 20 minutes to go or something, and I was in the dressing room, of course, because you can't sit on the bench, and I heard this big roar, and we lost 1-0, and the guys at the back, Eisendorn, Brian Brown, said to me their player was offside clearly, and the flag didn't go up, so it felt like a conspiracy, to be honest. So we weren't very happy as a club.
A lot of good conspiracy at an ethnic club, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They never go straight. Hey, you had a teammate there by the name of Paul Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did all right. He went on and made a decent career for himself.
Yeah.
He kept his head down.
He
He did too, absolutely.
didn't mind laying in the tackles, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
He could do his fair share of that. He was on this station a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about the Brunswick Juventus team, the same one you're talking about, and went through a few. And your title, I think, was social director. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it was something like president of the social club. Yeah, something
okay,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I kind
we
of
want to know about that.
Well, I kind of led the way when it come to the nightclubs. So I knew all the nightclub owners, I knew all the bouncers, and I could get any player into any nightclub, basically. And so that's how I got that.
From any
sort of
club?
name. Right, from any club.
They come to you?
Oh yeah, they were coming to me from everywhere.
So you weren't just the Juventus social director.
I'd be outside the Chevron nightclub on St Kilda Road, which was the biggest club in those days, and I'd be getting blokes in left, right, and centre in the side door, and there'd be players from the opposition clubs coming up. SP, can you get me in? I'm going, how many of you? And they're going, 8. I'll say, righto, 2 at a time, 3 minutes gap in between, and get down the side there, and they'll let you in.
Fantastic.
Tell them you know me. So
Sunday nights at the Chevron, there was 400 soccer guys in there, wasn't there?
Oh, there was.
And that back
that,
wall.
it was massive, absolutely massive.
How did that affect your football?
Well, I probably didn't realise it at the time, but there was a number of people giving me advice to sort of slow down on that stuff, especially when I got in the Socceroo squad.
Okay,
And,
so you were in the Socceroo squad training for a very long period of time. They were in camps and regular camps under Frank Arrow.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
87, 88.
Tell us about Frank.
Well, what can you say about Frank? I mean, he was crazy. He really was crazy. He really didn't coach. And this is a fact. He really didn't
Man management.
coach. It was all about man management and all the hysteria that you would have seen in the media. Most of the time, when I was in that squad for 2 years, Eddie Thompson coached, and he was a good guy and a really good coach. Frank took all the credit for everything, but Eddie Thompson was the brains behind it, in my view. And
He's
often
another hard man too.
Oh
Eddie
yeah,
Thompson.
yeah, absolutely. Hard player as well as he was a good coach though. And really, a lot of the times when we trained at St George Stadium in Sydney on training camps, Eddie took all the training,
Sessions, yeah.
and Frank often stayed back at the hotel entertaining journalists.
Best stories.
obviously trying to keep his job safe. But I just found him very frustrating. He's a very negative coach. You know, 5 at the back, 4 in the midfield, and 1 up front. And I was playing up front, so it wasn't much chance.
It was like.
Yeah, Graham Arnold up front with likes of Frank Farina, Robbie Slater. So it was hard getting in front of those blokes. But didn't get much of a chance, to be honest, in those 2 years. And of course, in those days, we didn't have many games. I think we only had 8 games or something in those 2 years because we weren't part of Asia. So we just had, and the World Cup had just
That's
been
right.
gone
We were
in
Oceania
'86.
still, weren't we
Yeah.
not? That's right.
So 87, 88, because it was 2 years after a World Cup year, there was not much happening.
Yeah.
So we played teams like Gothenburg from Sweden and Dinamo Zagreb and touring teams like that. But there was, really not much happening until we were leading up to the Olympic Games in '88, and that was what the main thing was. So.
Yeah, but did you let yourself down?
Oh, I did. I sort of had a couple of times I was out. Actually, once was in the Ritz in Fitzroy Street. I wasn't meant to be there, and Eddie Thompson caught me there and said he thought it was a good idea that I go back to the hotel because it was 2 a.m. and we were on an aeroplane at 7 a.m. going back to Sydney.
And what was Eddie doing there?
Yeah, that's what I asked him, George. I actually asked him that. He said, "Put your Crown Lager down and go back to the hotel." But then, I got a bit of a warning there from Eddie, and then 2 weeks later we were in Canberra, and we actually came up with this plan that if we all went out,
Not another plan.
If
Not
we-
another team and another plan.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
Not
Hang
us.
on, when you
no.
say we had a plan,
Oh,
well, some of us came up with a plan.
oh dear.
you're
That
the,
if- that if
you're the
all of
David
us- This
is not
Warner
gonna
in this
end well.
group.
No, don't compare me to David Warner, please.
This is not going to end well.
All right, so we.
But there's 25 of us in the squad.
Oh.
It was the same 25 for 2 years, right? So 23 of us went out. The only 2, and this says a lot about these 2, the only 2 who didn't go out was Paul Wade and Alan Davidson.
Okay.
Just absolutely committed to their careers, obviously.
Yeah, they were.
The rest of us went out, and some of us stayed out a bit long, myself
Long
included. And so I came back to the hotel at 6 a.m. with a couple of others.
Drop some names. It's
Oh,
all right.
I'd
It's
rather-
they're not going to get dropped.
I actually can't. I actually honestly can't
The
remember.
statute of limitations has well and truly
Well,
passed.
at 6 a.m., fair to say we'd had a big night.
Yeah.
And I actually can't remember who was with me, but I do remember walking into the foyer of the hotel and Frank Arrock was sitting there at 6 a.m. with his little notebook, and he said, "Good morning, guys. Have a good night." And I honestly remember at that moment I thought, I think I'm gone. And I think I probably deserve it.
The
So-
penny dropped, did it?
Yeah, so the only disappointing thing about I didn't go to the Olympic Games when I was told I was going to go. I did get dropped, but the only thing I was disappointed about was they did it through the papers. They didn't actually even
Tell you.
ring me to say, your behaviour's out of order. We tried to warn you. You didn't listen. You're now out. I would have accepted that, but to not get that call, I thought was pretty gutless, to be honest. So anyway, I found out through the papers. That's life. So you move on.
Whose article was it? Can you remember?
I think it was Laurie Schwab in The Age back
Great
then,
line.
and also, who was it? In
Anyone ring you for comment?
Peter
Might
Desiro.
have been Bob Bryan. Was
Oh,
it
Bob Bryan, yeah.
in those
Anyone ring
days?
you for comment?
No, not really. I think
Would
It's
you have
probably
had
a good
comment?
thing.
I think my
Would you
reputation.
have had a comment?
Probably. I think my reputation by that stage wasn't very good. I really probably didn't realise it at the time, but I was going out too much and probably drinking too much and just couldn't say no to a night out, And Greg McLeod, if he's still listening, he was one of the problems because he was always there next to me. So
So what you're
Thrown
saying?
him
I've got to
right
blame
under the
someone,
bus.
don't I?
No, he's not throwing him under the bus. He's just clarified all and sundry that he was an enabler, someone who made things happen.
Yeah.
Sounded like he threw him under the bus to me. Well, I hope he's still awake and sober-ish.
Going back to Wadey, I would say one thing. I mean, what a commitment that guy made to his football. I mean, he didn't go out drinking literally ever. He did odd time. He'd come out for a few beers. He would always do more training at Brunswick Juventus than anyone because his attitude was, "I'm not the most talented player here." In fact, he used to talk about himself as one of the least talented in that squad, which is a bit harsh on himself because he had talent.
Correct.
But he wasn't a Mickey Peterson, put it
No,
that way.
but what a
But
work ethic.
What a fitness level and a work ethic extraordinary. And, he played, I think, 110 times for Australia, something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think he's got Maradona's top.
yeah, what a shirt that would be.
That would be, huh?
So, I've got huge respect for Wadey. He's a great guy as well. And after what he's been through recently, or in the last 10 years with
Yes,
the
absolutely.
operation and stuff. And we got that squad back together, actually, for the World Masters Games in 2009. And Wadey showed me the skull on his, the sort of the
scar,
scar on his
yeah,
head,
yeah.
and it was quite extraordinary.
It is.
So, great great guy and great career.
And he's still out there inspiring kids with his life skills project. He's a superstar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, where did you go to after this particular episode then?
After the Socceroos,
you've just been told you're missing out on the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
What did they do for your football spirit?
quite honestly, I was sitting in a pub with a mate watching the Socceroos play at the Olympic Games, and he said, "How's it feel watching them?" I said, "Not real good." He said, "What are you going to do?" Because I'd actually played full time for 3 years. That Socceroo commitment we were asked to make was full time, and so one of my mates said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. I might have to get a job." It was a horrible thought to go and have to get a job, but that's what I started doing. So I started switching on. I was 26 then. I started switching on to the fact that I'm not going to probably play for Australia and get any overseas opportunities. So I switched my attention to still played soccer obviously, but switched my attention to getting a career going and ended up having a very good corporate career in the business world. So that's what I switched on to at that stage.
All right, so you headed off to BULLEEN?
Yeah. I set off to BULLEEN, and that was a great 4 years to end my career. Highlight, of course, was the '93 Victorian Premier League Championship, and I was fortunate enough to score the first goal in that grand final and set up the second one for Frank Valentich, who still hasn't thanked me to this day for putting it on a silver platter for him.
All that TV coverage he gets, and you think he would thank you.
But what was it like playing at the Benetton Club?
Oh, fantastic. The only disappointment, I mean, they're a great club and, really looked after us as players. Money was never an issue there, which it was in the Victorian Premier League at a lot of clubs. The only disappointing thing was that in '93, after we won it, they applied to get into the National League and should have got into the National League. They were going to renovate the stadium and all that stuff. But I think it got political, and Brunswick Juventus had finished 9th that year in the Victorian Premier League, got promoted to the National League. They'd finished 9th and we'd finished 1st. So that was disappointing, because I was thinking I'll maybe go back to the National League for the last couple of years of my career.
Yep.
And but look, we had 4 great years there at BULLEEN. We were never out of the top 3 in those 4 years. Only come up with 1 championship, which is probably at least 1 short.
Mm-hmm.
We probably should have won it.
Tell us about some of the characters, some of the people who made that team hum.
Well, Jeff Olver joined us in '93, and that was a great signing by the club.
So he replaced Morris Raponi, who was sitting in that seat last week, is that right?
He did, that's correct. And
Rappers, huh?
one of the
He's
great
a character.
He is. One of the great players was Anthony Grabak.
Yep.
Great midfielder. Should have played in the National League for a lot longer. He did play for Melbourne Knights, or Melbourne Croatia as they were known back then, and also Brunswick Juventus with me. But he should have played for 10 years in the National League. He was a very talented player, great passer of the ball. But he played in the central midfield with myself for a lot of the time, and fair to say we ran a few games between us from there. We sort of were able to take control of that central midfield, and great player. Andrew Zinni come on loan actually in that '93 year. He made a big difference, and my old teammate from Juventus. But there's other people like Robbie Krajicic at the back. Really good player at that level. Robbie had a crack at National League at Heidelberg.
And what were the big games you set yourself up for?
Well, Faulkner were pretty good in those days, and North Geelong, if you remember, North Geelong with
strong,
Bogdan Bonk, very good player.
Played with Bogdan.
Yeah, very good player. So they were strong. So those games were big. When Juventus dropped into the Victorian Premier League, they were very big games, of course, with BULLEEN. But yeah, Faulkner's who we beat in that grand final in '93, and we had some good tussles with them over those 4 years.
Italian derbies.
Altona
Magic. Strong.
Became
Coley
quite
was there,
good
wasn't he, at that time?
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah.
You dropped back into midfield, so there's a little bit of a change.
Yep.
Slow down, huh?
Slow
Correct,
down, perhaps.
George. You picked it.
Yeah. But then I reckon comes with that some responsibility and leadership.
Yeah, look, I actually did mature finally when I got to BULLEEN. I think it took a while, but I did take it a lot more seriously then. I actually probably had 4 of my better years there, because I was actually taking it a lot more seriously, and I was pretty fit, and I wasn't drinking anywhere near as much, and lost a little bit of weight, and I was able to run all day in the midfield, and had a couple of really good years. I won the best and fairest 1 year at BULLEEN, and I was quite high up in the voting most of the other years. So yeah, that was really good. So I did take an on-field leadership role. There's no doubt. If you spoke to Andy Bazikis, who was our coach,
Yep. We'll be speaking to Andy in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, well, he would tell you that myself and Jeff Olver and Robbie Krajcic in particular, and Anthony Grabak, they were the sort of leaders out in the ground.
The spine as
And,
such. Yeah.
you know, we demanded the right standards from the young blokes. There's a lot of good 22, 23-year-olds in the team, and I could sort of see a bit of myself in some of them.
Were there any wild 17-year-olds with a real opportunity to bark back when it was required?
Well, there was a young Lou Becchiaris there, and what a talent he was. But you know,
Did you straighten him up?
No, I don't think anyone could. I tried to.
Wild stallion, huh?
He was pretty wild and a good player, great talent, but didn't go on and do what he should have done.
John Markowski, did you remember him?
Of course.
What a talent, huh?
Oh, fantastic player. Played against him for years. I think I played against him in the National League when he was 16, playing for.
Well, tell us about him as a 16-year-old.
He was
Sunshine
he was
George Cross.
15.
15 was he? Yeah.
Big body, big boy.
Just a big boy, but what a left
oh,
foot.
yeah.
I mean, the left foot was as good as any left foot you're going to see going around.
I remember
you know.
when I was at South Melbourne watching every time we had to play, and Johnny Markowski was in the side, I'd always go, I'm always going to watch out for him, because there's somewhere in the game he would bob up and do something quite outrageous.
Yeah.
And I mean, by that I mean brilliant. And it would cost us the game, or it would square the result. You know, he'd score an equaliser late in the game.
Yeah.
I'd say, Markowski, wish he was playing for us.
What a great player. I mean, if he had got himself a bit fitter, you know, he could have been anything. Because I don't think he had so much talent. I don't think he ever was.
He could have gone overseas.
I don't think he was
really
ever
made
really
an impact.
fully fit. He was always pretty fit, but I reckon he could have been fitter.
Well, he had a stint overseas, and I think he had a serious injury, and then it maybe became
That's what
Slowed
I mean.
him down a
bit
It
too
was
hard.
chronic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think had he been given a chance,
pound for pound. We've probably not produced a better
One of
player,
them.
but he
One of
hasn't
them.
fulfilled that
Yeah, I
potential
think that's
that he
fair.
showed.
Fair comment.
Yeah.
He's coaching in Strathmore, I think it is.
and he's
Little-
quite shrewd.
Little cheerio to Jordan Ross, who John Markowski signed. He's a good friend of mine's son, so Billy Ross, a good mate of mine, and Geordie Ross is playing out there. So I'm going to head out and watch a few of those games this year.
Very
Well,
good.
while you're getting ready to do that, we'll take a break and come back for our last segment on the Pioneers.
As we come back towards the end of another great show with our special guest, SP Scotty Patterson, Georgie and I, we just want to find out, I've got lots of notes, but in my notes, John Margaritis, while the old fox keeps coming up, there's got to be some stories, right?
Well, Johnny, the great Johnny Margaritis, he was the Melbourne-based assistant to the Socceroo coach Frank Orrock in those days. So I got to know John for those 2 years that I was in the Socceroos. And one of my favourite stories with John, we had a Melbourne-based players barbecue down at Andrew Zinni's place at Christmas time. And I got to have a few drinks with John and have a laugh with him. And the boys were saying to me, wind him up, SP, because he reckons he was a great player. And I hear he was a great player too, by the way. Anyway, I was winding him. I said, so John, tell me, mate, how good were you? Tell me, how good were you? He said, Scotty, when I play, the fans come to the gate. First they ask, does John Margaritis play today? If they say yes, they come in. If they say no, they go home. And then he said to me, how did you get in the ground, John? All these people, you know, because he said that they want to touch me, they want to touch me. He said, Scotty, they bring me in on helicopter. He was a great character. Fantastic. Last one quickly.
And
Yeah,
made an
no,
impression.
go
Made an
for it.
impression.
We were doing a series of running sessions, which was Frank Orrock's mate from Hungary, a Hungarian Olympic coach, this
Yeah.
running session. And we had to do 3,200 metre runs this day. And
30.
30 times 200 metres.
Wow.
And John Margaritis says to Paul Wade, you're the only one I can trust. So you step out 200 metres, because John had forgot to bring the keys to Olympic Park to open up to let us in.
Of course.
In fact, he got out of the taxi that morning, and it was like a scene out of Cheech and Chong, the movie. There was smoke bellowing everywhere, you know. And so
Cigarette smoke.
So Wadey's got to
Yes.
mark out this 200 metre distance at Gosh's paddock, what it's called now. And so Wadey marks out no more than 170 metres, and we do these 3200s in easily. 'Cause
Record time.
All had to be done in 20 seconds or something. It was doing it easy. And the very last one, Andrew Zinni and Ernie Tapai decided they're going to have a sprint, a proper sprint on the last one. So they sprint this last one, and we all finish behind them. And John's meant to be timing everyone individually, and he's saying to the boys, just put your hand up in the air when you cross the line. So you can imagine it was comedy capers. The boys are putting their hands up when they were nowhere near the line, you know. Anyway, John's looking at his watch for like 2 minutes after we've all done this last 200-metre run, and he goes, what's he doing? What is he doing? And he goes, hey boys, what is the world record for 200? Because Andrew Zinni and Tap, I've done this, the 170 in about 16 seconds or something, 17 seconds, something like that. And he thinks they've broken the world record.
Correct.
Unbelievable. The boys just
Because
fell
somebody
over.
tampered, huh?
Ah, yeah. So anyway, he was a great character. It was never a dull moment with John. It was always a laugh. So.
And you've had a very fulfilling career and a lot of fun. And you probably could have done a little bit better, but you know that better than most.
Oh, no doubt. I was pretty reckless when I had a good opportunity, and but gee whiz, I had a lot of fun. There was no doubt I had a lot of fun.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about and a lot to enjoy this evening. Thanks for joining us on the Pioneers. Once again, you've scored big time, COTSANIS.
I'm pretty pleased with this. And next
SB,
week,
eh?
yeah, SB has been a sensational
Patterson.
guest. And next week we've got an old mate of yours. It'll be like Acropolis now in here
Oh,
next week. Andy Pascalides and you in the same studio.
By the way, my daughter tonight in Sydney has gone to see Agamemnon, George Capignaris.
Oh, it's a good chance he'll turn up with the two of you next week.
There's a possibility we can get him in.
The good
Scott
chance.
Patterson, thank you for joining us, mate.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Happy
Cheers.
Easter.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, George.
What effort.
All good?
Oh, mate, sensational. I wish Wally could have enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
No, that was great. Thanks for having me in.
Maybe
FNR, Football Nation Radio.
COTSANIS, no call! Score!
Salamini for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli, what vision! Bath blasts. Yes! That's it!
Miljevic.
Here's Bozanic. They haven't! They might have won it!
The Pioneers with George Donikian and George COTSANIS on FNR, Football Nation Radio.